This is Paul Hawksby and Andy Jacobs here on TalkSport. Well, shortly after leaving Leeds United, Robbie Rogers took to his blog, told the world not only was he retiring from football, but that he was gay as well. In part of his statement, he said, "I'm a soccer player, I'm Christian and I'm gay. Those are things that people might say wouldn't go well together. But my family raised me to be an individual and stand up for what I believe in." He tells his story in his book, Coming Out to Play, and he joins us in the studio now. Robbie, good afternoon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I suppose it was a long road to making that call. It's sad in some ways you felt you couldn't do it while you were still over in England playing football here.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just in England, it was in football in general. The amount of things I heard in the changing room, and again, from a very conservative Catholic family, I just heard so many things that made me believe that it just wasn't possible to be both. So that's why I made my announcement and kind of just, I don't know, took some time off.
So was it? It wasn't fans that was a concern. It was
no,
players.
It was my teammates. The guys that you become brothers with your teammates, and so I wasn't. And even now, I'm not necessarily worried about the fans, and I would never be worried really about what would go on in the stadium, people chanting stuff. It was more about my personal relationships with guys, and the same guys, at Leeds or at different clubs where I heard really homophobic things, things that I heard in the MLS and back in the States. Those are the same guys that encouraged me to go back to the game and have supported me. So made me realize that it's not that they're homophobic, but it's just that weird sports culture.
Is it true you told a fan before you wrote it in your blog?
Not a fan, but
a bloke that just in the street sort of thing.
I was out to drink with some friends, and this girl asked me. I think she was asking me to see if I wanted to go get a drink with her.
Yeah.
So she asked me, like, "Are you gay or straight?" I was like, and I hadn't told anyone. I mean, I hadn't even said it out loud to myself, and I just felt I was just so depressed, and I just wanted to get that out. So I just told her I was gay, and she was like, "Okay, well." I was just curious because my friends wanted to get a drink or wanted to see if you want to get a drink with me.
Wow.
I mean, you've just won the MLS Cup. Congratulations on that, by the way. And are you worried, though, that this not worried, but concerned that this defines you rather than, you are a good football player, that people will always associate you with this rather than actually winning stuff and being a decent player?
I mean, last year was a little crazy. Last year being back in Los Angeles, I'm from there, and it was like every day for training, doing interviews and doing events, and just so much was focused on me being an out footballer. But this year, really, it's been quite normal for me, and I've played a small role, I think, in a team that's won a championship. I think we've been one of the best teams in MLS history. I know people have asked me about getting back to the national team and stuff like that. So I think there's been less of a focus. I understand that in the end of the day, 10, 20 years, people will still probably talk about me being one of the first out footballers, but it just will become a non-issue, I think, once more guys feel comfortable to do it.
I mean, you must have known it would bring a responsibility with it. You went in when you made that post on the blog with your eyes open, I'm sure.
Actually, when I posted that, I thought I was going to step away from soccer. I was accepted in London College of Fashion, so I saved money to go back to school and take care of myself for a while. Mm-hmm. So I had no intention at all in being here sitting with you talking about a book.
Wow.
I mean, it was the last thing I expected.
And were you surprised by the reaction, the positive reaction?
Yeah. I mean, that's why. If I wouldn't have had that reaction, I definitely wouldn't have gone back to football. And the reaction from my family, the reaction from the fans, from my teammates, from everyone was the exact opposite of what I expected. And again, I expected that stuff just because of the things that I heard from a youth footballer all the way till I was a professional or a national player. So again, that's why I was so scared.
Do you think, Robbie, maybe some education is needed? Because you say the same guys that were saying all this stuff, off the cuff remarks that made you feel you couldn't come out, have subsequently been very, very supportive. Yeah. And we're going to have to use that word, unfortunately, which is around football, banter. The idea that you can say this stuff and not mean it. Yeah. When it actually comes down to it, the guys don't think like that. So can work be done?
Yeah. I mean, I think there has to be work that's done. I mean, the only way really to get footballers to come out is for other footballers to come out. Mm-hmm. And the only way to do that is really to create an environment where there's going to be banter no matter what. I'm involved in banter always in our locker room, and it's back and forth, and we aren't overly sensitive. But it comes to the point where, I've been in locker rooms where guys have had discussions on how could you even be, like, not to me, but talking to each other, how could you even be gay? How could a man go through the act of loving another man? Like, how disgusting is that? So, that's not banter.
That's not banter.
But those are changing rooms that I've been in, and those are the kind of things, that you hear. So I think And again, these are the same guys that supported me.
Yeah.
The exact same guys. So I think, again, it comes down to education and a little bit, ignorance and to just be more sensitive to the people around you. And I think people are. I think it's changing. I think, there's homophobia in football. I think there's racism. I think there's sexism. See, the Women's World Cup is going to be played on artificial turf. Like, FIFA would never do that to the men's teams.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of issues that people need to discuss because it's such an amazing sport and it's so great. But there's a lot of issues that it's in the Stone Age. And
Gareth Thomas, the Welsh rugby player, you're probably aware of his book, Proud, brilliantly by Michael Calvin. Gareth says that a footballer has come to him and doesn't feel that he can come out. He's spoken to him, he's tried to help him, him through the process, but the guy's in bits and he doesn't feel the climate is right. He doesn't feel ultimately, it seems that he can do it. I mean, have you had players coming to you?
I've had a bunch of different sports, NBA, NFL, all that stuff. I've never had a footballer contact me asking me for advice.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It just reminds me of, I was so closeted that I was the same way. It didn't matter what anyone said around me. It was more about me kind of coming to terms with it and me finding the courage to do that.
You played in Holland, and Holland's quite famous for being quite a liberal country. Did you not feel even there?
No, it's a very liberal country, but it's still the
football
sport.
is still football. That's interesting.
Still football.
Wow. The other thing you said in that piece in your blog that you're a Christian and you're gay, and obviously in the States that brings its problems as well. The kind of far right, the Christian right, are very anti-gay, aren't they? So has that been an issue? Has that been discussed?
My family's still very Catholic. My mom goes to church every day. She speaks at Mass, but it just took this personal experience with having someone so close, having struggled with the way I did, to just kind of turn on a light bulb for her. And my family wasn't supportive of same-sex marriage back in the States when it was all going down in California. But now we've had discussions. She's like, I can't wait to get married. I can't wait to be at your wedding, for you to have a family. So and I'm not a Catholic or a Christian. I don't label myself as that, but I'm still a religious person. I believe that there's a purpose for me, and I think a lot of people would want to argue to the death that you can't be gay and religious, or you can't be religious and gay. And I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think religion is supposed to be about loving your neighbor, right, and loving one another, but it's become so much about hate. So for my family, it's changed very much, and I think for a lot of people around me, it's changed, and even the Pope now is changing a bit. So I think things are moving forward. Just
because he's a football fan.
He's a football San Lorenzo fan.
He's an Argentine.
Sorry, Andy.
No, I was going to say that because interesting the public reaction to Tom Daley when he came out.
Yeah.
It was really a feeling of A, support, and B, so what? And I think it is getting like that. Most people are tolerant and decent. I know there's a lot of people that are narrow-minded, but it's interesting that public reaction.
It's so interesting that you have the reaction that it's so what? Because it wasn't like that before I came out.
No.
That's why it's so interesting to me when people say that to me. I'm like, that's awesome. I wish you guys were that way before I came out, that it was just not a big deal. But that's the truth, how it's been. So it's such a weird thing for me to grasp my head around. It's my teammates, again, that would say these things, where the guys were like, so what? We love you, Robbie. We want you to keep playing. So again, it just comes down to that education of being more sensitive and just being aware of what you're saying, and being aware that there's probably a gay guy in the locker room, or you probably have a friend that's not out.
We're talking to Robbie Rogers about his book Coming Out to Play. There'll be more from Robbie in a few moments' time. This is Hawksby and Jacobs here on TalkSport with you until 4 o'clock. We're chatting to Robbie Rogers in the studio this afternoon about his book Coming Out to Play. Robbie, we were talking earlier on about the banter in the dressing room and the nature of it. Does that still go on at LA Galaxy? But is it a touch more inclusive? Is it different now?
It's just very different. And there's a level, of course, where we'll banter about I don't know, West Hollywood is where the gays live, in California. And so we'll banter about that kind of stuff, and I'll go back and forth with them. So it's it's open, and we're talking about it, and, there's a level you don't pass a certain... I mean, I'm the kind of person that would never cross that line.
Sure.
Anyways, I don't know, I'm just a very shy person.
But that's a kind of important for you, the fact that it can be inclusive and they feel they can say that stuff. That's acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, it's the kind of elephant in the room.
Yeah, I joke with Robbie all the time, Robbie Keane, who's obviously played at the highest level, and we joke about different things. And like after our team party, I was like the only guy dancing, and I was like, yeah, it's because I'm the gay guy. Like, of course, I'm dancing with all your wives because they want to dance with you guys, but you guys are too afraid. So we banter all the time.
You came over to Europe to try football here, and now you've gone back to the MLS.
Yeah.
And soccer's changed in the States, hasn't
Yeah,
it? The
crazy.
World Cup was incredible for America.
It's crazy.
Is it different now playing in the MLS? Does it feel more like accepted as a professional sportsman?
Yeah. I mean, we average higher attendance than the NBA and the NHL, and teams like Seattle. When we play up there every game, it's like 55,000 people. And there's the new team in New York that's owned by Yankees and Etihad, and there's gonna be a new team in LA. It's crazy how it's growing. And I joined the league in 2007, so I've played for quite a while there, and just the amount of growth is. I never would have expected it to be like this.
Well, I was in Seattle earlier this year, and I was really surprised by the profile of the side. I mean, you go into shops, and this was first week of the NFL, Seahawks' first game in Seattle. And obviously everything was Seahawks, but shops had lots of Sounders stuff and lots of merchandise.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's
a football town.
Absolutely amazing. The fans will go to bars before the game and all walk together to the stadium. And when you play there, you can't hear anything. It's absolutely amazing. So there's a number of clubs like that. Maybe not at that number, the amount of fans, but definitely with that kind of support. So I'm excited, to see kind of how it keeps growing, and then once it will take over the NFL or something.
And what about the national side? You do know Jurgen Klinsmann pretty well, having worked with him, and he seems pretty happy there. He's been linked with jobs in the past in the Premier League, but his family's there and his life's there. But what do you think of the job he's doing?
I don't know. I think I'm not sure what he's going to do. He's always an interesting guy that kind of just does whatever he wants. I haven't spoken to him since I came out, but I played with him. I played on his team, on the national team, maybe 4 or 5 games while he was a coach. I think he's done a decent job. I think I was a little surprised with stuff that went down with Landon. I was surprised with some other stuff, some decisions. But, I mean, I can't pretend I would never want to be a manager, with that kind of pressure. So, I'm quite happy just being on the other side of it.
So that's not the route you're likely to take after football?
Nope.
You don't want to coach? Punditry?
I think when I'm done playing football, I'll do technical work with young footballers and work with them and that kind of stuff. But having to make decisions where leaving guys out of the side or cuts or stuff like that, it doesn't interest me.
Will you campaign with? Is that something that interests you as well? I mean, you kind of feel because of what's happened.
Yeah, I know. It's I
there's
never
an
in a million years.
Yeah,
there is, and I never. It wasn't my intention to do this kind of stuff. There wasn't my intention to be somewhat of a role model. So.
Trailblazer, I think we call it.
Yeah, well, it's admitted. Jason Collins said that. He said that he blazed the trail for him. So that, as I said, it may come with a responsibility, but that's your choice ultimately.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. I think again, this year it's been more about being just a footballer, and I found the balance. And of course, I know it's important to go speak at events and work with organizations, but I don't know what's going to happen after football. I just will kind of continue to be myself and choose to do little projects and help people in whatever way I can.
It comes back to what I said at the start. You don't want something like this just to define you. There's a lot more to you than just this.
Yeah, and of course I don't want to just be a gay footballer. I mean, and just don't want to be a footballer and don't just want to be. I just think there's so many amazing things in life that you can experience. So I'll try to dip my toes in all of them.
You mentioned Robbie Keane there, and he's still playing fantastically well. He's up for MVP, isn't he, I think, in the MLS this year. I mean, at 34, and as we were saying, we've always said he's probably the greatest instinctive finisher in the world football. No one better.
Yeah, and some of the goals that he scored this year were just absolutely amazing, where he'd meg someone and then chip a keeper, and just was just a different level. And this year there were quite a few really outstanding MLS players. So for him to win the MVP and then to obviously win the league this year, I think it's been absolutely amazing. I hope he stays with us next year.
And you got the chance to play against Thierry Henry, I gather, as one of your heroes, which is nice.
Yeah. My first game at Leeds, I didn't have my international clearance, but I was with them and we played at Emirates, and it was his first game.
That game when he scored.
He's
been talking about that
I was
this week.
Oh my gosh, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I've always watched him as a youngster, and having to defend against him this year is a pain in the butt. So
he's still got a turn of pace, has he?
Oh my gosh, he still has a turn of pace, and he just sees everything. So I was happy that they didn't make it to the final.
How do you think Frank Lampard might do? When's he getting there?
Yeah, I mean, he's a Chelsea fan. He wants him gone as quickly as possible.
I hope he comes. It should be interesting to see. I'm always interested in seeing how guys can transition. There have been players, big-time players, that have come over there and, playing in the heat in the summer and the humidity and having to travel. It's tough. So I know, like, Thierry didn't want to play on turf ever, so he only, I think, played maybe in one turf game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. Obviously he has so much class. He's such an amazing player, so I'm sure he won't have a problem. But it's interesting to see how guys transition.
Finally, there could be a lot of footballers listen to TalkSport as they head home from training. There could be a player today who's been in the same situation as you and is gay and doesn't quite know what to do. I mean, I know it's not an easy thing to offer advice on, but what would you say to him?
Yeah, I'm like the worst at giving advice, this kind of stuff, because I only came out 2 years ago and I struggled for so long. But I guess, like, if I could speak to myself when I was younger, I didn't speak to anyone. Like, I didn't speak to a therapist or any kind of coach or anyone. So maybe to find someone away from your family, your friends, your teammates that you could just, like, get that stuff out of you, just to share those emotions, those feelings, just so that they can kind of help you make a plan, or just to hear you, because again, I kept all that stuff inside, so it was kind of depressing.
We wish you well. Thanks very much for coming in, and best of luck with the book. Have a great Christmas.
Have a lovely Christmas.
Robbie Rogers there. The book is coming out to play and is available